me a sec, guys. Let's throw the weight button down. Here we go. All right. Welcome to the Rocstedi podcast, episode 43. We've got a couple of boys in the house tonight. We've got Raymond and Drew. Drew was just 24 hours ago. We're doing a podcast. So welcome back, Drew, so soon.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on again.
Not a problem. And we've got Raymond, who's, I believe, his third time on this on the Rocstedi podcast. First time was about longevity and anti-aging. Second time was we'll talk all about the stars. And today we're going to talk about the current conflict happening in Ukraine and Russia. Before I do, I'm going to switch the camera on for you boys. So here we go. I'll give you camera access. I'll also switch mine on here. Give me a second. It's a lot of little movements to do here with this stage. So
there he is.
Give that to you, Drew. Invite to video, and Ray, invite to video. All right. So you guys just accept that there. There we go.
Am I sideways, am I?
Yeah, sideways, yeah. Just try tilting it again. It should work. Yeah.
Let's have a look. I think there's a tilt button. Let's have a look. Yeah. Right, so that's the camera. And
You're good, mate.
Okay, you want me to tilt this sideways? Okay.
You can do that if you like.
No, here we go.
There we go. Gotcha. Oh, no, it's gone back the other way.
You tell me when I'm up the right way, all right?
No, not now. You were before.
As a scientist struggling with
good now.
Well, then you guys are sideways. That's hilarious. All right, so let's just go.
Yeah, don't worry. I'll control the show and everything, and you just worry about the camera. But you can touch the camera, and it'll bring it bigger on the screen.
He's a scientist, and he's struggling with his phone tech.
No, what it is Rock's trying to confuse me. Every time we've done a podcast, we've never had this problem. And because you're here, he's trying to make me look stupid. I know what he's trying to do.
It saves me from looking like the dumb one in the room.
You're doing a fine job of that yourself, mate.
So I'm just going to pump this out as share with followers while we're at it. There we go.
Yeah, I misspelt my name entering my name onto the profile, and was saying last night how much of a how funny it was that it came out as free after their story of my journey after.
Oh, absolutely! I was watching it last night, and I heard
ironic.
You say that.
Ironic. That's the word I was looking for.
That is ironic. It's so funny. Free got it. No, it was a good speech last night. Well, not speech, but great podcast, guys. Very interesting.
Thanks, mate. No, great story that Drew's got, mate. It was totally an interesting story. It was a good show. You can feel when the shows are good too, going along there. So we've got. I've got to give the audience a quick shout out here. We've got a couple of people that don't usually show up at this time, which is great. It is a different time to the time I normally do a podcast, but we've got Charlie, who's always here. So thank you, Charlie, for being present. Charles, thanks for joining the room. We've got Kaylee, Truthful Sweet, who's also here as well all the time. Thank you very much. Of course, there's us guys in the house. We've got Deanna, who's here quite regularly as well, and Uncle Eddie as well. So thank you very much. But a couple of friends, good friends of mine, I would consider like brothers as well, is Tank and David, which is actually Worm. I think the last podcast I did a couple of shows ago, Worm was in the audience with a different picture. Didn't recognize him because I'm so used to calling him Worm in a different profile picture. So welcome back, Worm. Thank you very much, man. I'd even love some contributions here. So just before we start off the show, we've got a little bit of time on this one as well. This particular show is something that is a discussion I briefly had with Ray and Drew. We caught up during the week last week for lunch. So we could. So Drew's actually one of Ray's friends, real life friends, and introduced me so we could do this podcast, which we did yesterday with Drew, which was fantastic. By the way, go back and catch that show if you can. But we got into the subject of talking about the war in Russia and Ukraine that's going on at the moment. And I'm not that knowledgeable on it. And I hear a lot of stories and I'm not exactly sure of the nuts and bolts of the whole thing. But Ray has been really quite studying it. So we had a conversation. We thought, let's jump on this week after we did the podcast with Drew and kind of ask some questions. I think some audience members might have some questions too. I know there's a couple of people in the audience that have different opinions to what's going on in the war. So I'd like to put that all on the table, get the facts out there, and see where it goes. So I'm gonna hand it over to you in just a sec. I'm gonna also say that if you want to chime into this show, At the end, we can have it interactive. It won't be a debate or anything. This is going to be a show where with just us few boys here are going to be asking questions and taking questions from the audience through messages through Instagram. So my link is clickable if you're listening here on Fireside Live. You should be able to go to my Instagram and leave a live voicemail message, and I can play that here on the show. And towards the end, we might bring a person or two up. So, boys, I think I'm battling with a bit of COVID right now as we speak. Feeling totally under the weather, but I've cranked some Panadol and like paracetamol and stuff. Had a coffee, and I'm here to learn. So, we're good to go, mate. But thanks for joining us, Ray. Thanks for coming back again, mate. You're third time here, and it's going to be a regular thing with Ray. So, this man, I met him again just a few weeks ago in real life as well. Went to his house, checked out his observatory. It's just truly fucking amazing. This guy is just, it's not just a dome. That information of domes is just full of full of spectacular information inside that head, right?
Geek. You can use the word geek. It's all right. Yeah, you're not going to offend him.
I'm a geek, and that keeps Andrew kind of grounded, or Drew kind of grounded, you know. So he's got those big arms covered in tattoos, and all of a sudden he's hanging around a scientist who's an astronomer, you know, keeps him grounded.
What, just before we do dive in, Ray, you look like you're filming from down at some seedy strip club, mate, with the lights in the background there, mate.
I'm at Girls. Yeah. What you guys?
He's a man of many talents, Drew.
Yes, clearly.
This is Rock's been here, and obviously you've been here, Drew. But for the people that are watching, this is my man cave. So I've got a poker table in here, I've got my bar in here, got my big screen in here. So this is kind of where I entertain and stuff. And I've just got a few fluoro lights through.
Is that how scientists live in 2022? Is it? Or?
It absolutely is. Yeah, we're not the nerds you think we are. We're the party boys that you think we are.
It's a hell of a pim pad, ladies and gentlemen. I can vouch for that myself.
Pimp pad. So. Fair enough.
Right. So, mate, just to recap a little bit. I mean, I don't even know where to start because, obviously the war kicked off, I think, just over about a month ago now, and yeah, sure. Obviously the things that were in the lead up to that war, and I'm hearing stories that happened things almost 10 years ago that were leading up to this war. So maybe start at a point where you think is important to start to inform us on your understanding of the war, and we'll take it step by step, and I'll just ask some questions along the way, or I might just be quiet and learn.
So I think with these types of subjects, we can go down rabbit holes, and I'm not going to pretend to be some type of war expert. I'm not going to pretend to be a historian. What I do know is behavioral science, and I know the mentality of a dictator. And dictators don't resonate with a view of the world of what's good for humanity. They resonate from pride and ego, right? So because Putin resonates with pride and ego and not compassion and love, right? He is not a person that's interested in what's great for Europe or great for Russia or great for the world. He's interested in domination. Same with a few other dictators that are around the world. But him and the Ukraine, I won't say Russia, I'll say Putin and the Ukraine have kind of been at loggerheads for a long time. Ukraine's strategically placed. It has access to the ocean. That's why they took Crimea in 2004. I think it was 2004, 14, and 14. And he is using the excuse that Ukraine is a danger to Russia because it wants to join NATO, and he's saying you cannot join NATO, or otherwise we're going to nuke you. You're going to be too close, and that might be a concern. I mean, NATO, as far as I know, has never attacked a country for being peaceful ever. So Russia really doesn't have anything to fear from NATO unless it's being aggressive. And the excuse that he's using to get into Ukraine at the moment is that the Ukrainians, millions of the Ukrainians, are under some type of Nazi rule, some type of oppressive Nazi regime. Now, there are white supremacists in every single country around the world, and there's no more in Ukraine that are in other countries. And when we've got some here in Australia, we've got some groups like that too. The reason he's using that argument in Russia is because Russia did team up with the Americans and the English at the end of the Second World War, and it was kind of right at the end. And they did team up, and they helped crush the Nazis that were trying to take over Europe and the world. So there is a huge sense of national pride in Russia about with the word denazification, because the Russians love the fact that they helped quell or quash the Second World War and to help defeat the Nazis. So when he brings that up and he says we're going to do it again, he gets, and of course there's only state-run TV in Russia. There's not, you don't get the freedom that we get in our countries, you know, all the different types of left-wing, right-wing ideologies on the news. It's just state-run news. So all they see is that Ukraine is run by Nazis and Russia are going to go in there and liberate people. And the Russian people actually believe that the Ukrainian people are going to greet the Russian tanks with flowers and bottles of wine and say, oh, thanks for liberating us. What we're seeing on the ground couldn't be more opposite, and it couldn't be more wrong of how the Ukrainians are treating the Russians as they come into their country. But the Russians were completely unprepared for this because they didn't have any resistance from the Western world back in 2014 when they annexed Crimea from Ukraine, and they had a very small amount of resistance from the Ukrainian army, who were untrained back in 2014. Russia thought they were going to walk into this country and take it over in 3 days. That's what they thought. Well, the statistics are off the charts. And if you've ever seen a superpower get their ass kicked by a small country, this is the war. And there has never been a war like this that has been on social media and so well documented, where it's a David and Goliath war. And Ukraine, has leveraged social media so well to show us what's happening on the ground. It's showing us the missiles hitting hospitals and schools and other things like that. Could it be propaganda? Well, anything can be propaganda. What we saw on the news tonight in Australia could be propaganda. But the Ukrainian media is a very open media. It's not controlled by the government. It might be during a time of war. There's always that possibility. But Russia has made so many mistakes in the last 4 weeks. In the first 2 weeks of this war,
I want to cut in there. I want to cut in there a little bit. So obviously, we're all very aware of the attack, and you got to go into the whole thing. Just a little bit of background of what's starting to press. I mean, we know that Putin's a dictator and he's egotistical, but what's pressing him to want to take over? Is there any other motives? Is he trying to sweep Ukraine back because of the old USSR? What's his actual
absolutely.
motive for that?
Look, at some point in history, every single country probably belonged to somebody else. Australia belonged to the Aborigines. America belonged to the American Indians. Every single country somewhere has had a war. Every single country has got a gripe with another country. If you really wanted to dig down, I was born in England. I live in Australia. I don't have a gripe with people from Scandinavia because the Vikings came to England and used to do stuff. And, it's 100 years ago. It was 700 years ago with the Vikings. Some of this stuff it's in the past, right? You've got to move on, and countries are now countries and they are who they are. But yeah, absolutely. Vladimir Putin has this grand vision, and this is a typical narcissistic character trait. One of the narcissistic character traits is that they have delusions of grandiose and grandeur, and that is their legacy, right? That they achieve all these fantastic things. So he wants to take Ukraine back. He thinks he's going to be this big national hero in Russia if he takes it back, but he won't stop there. And this is why the West needs to care about this, because I know there's people out there that say, well, why are we getting involved? Why are we donating Zelensky, who's obviously the president of Ukraine? Why are we giving them weapons? Why are we helping them? Why do we even care? Well, he's not going to stop the Ukraine. If he gets to walk into Ukraine and take it, and the West is just this smattering of liberal countries that don't do anything, then we're saying to dictators, not just Russia, we're saying to other dictatorships and other superpowers, could be China, could be Kim Jong, and there could be others out there too. We're basically saying, hey, we're weak, we don't know how to unite, we can't do anything, and you can go and invade any democratic country you want, and we're going to sit and watch as long as it's not NATO. That's not the message you want to send to a dictator. And especially when you've got other superpowers now who are run by dictators, they are watching fantastically closely. They are watching the sanctions on Russia, and they are terrified, not of a war, of sanctions, because some of those other superpowers are reliant on trade. And when they saw what we did to the banking system in Russia, the confiscating of oligarch, billionaire super yachts, freezing their bank accounts, confiscating their assets. So far, over $750 billion has been confiscated of Russian billionaires that made their money from Vladimir Putin, giving them, government contracts and stuff without going to tender like it's supposed to. And they've had their assets, almost $1 trillion now has been taken. And that money is going to go back to build Ukraine. So you've got these very powerful billionaires who have their own private mercenary armies, and they've all got them. All these Russian billionaires have to have armies, like maybe 100 security personnel, all ex-special forces, that type of caliber. And Putin is now getting increasingly paranoid because people that he thought were friends, he is now costing them billions of dollars. Their assets, their companies are being frozen and confiscated. And those billionaires are very pissed off with Putin. So that puts a lot of pressure on
Let me cut in there, Ray.
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
I want to cut in whenever I can, mate. I'm going to let you just talk, and then I'll cut in if I have a question, right? So I'm going to just bring up some rebuttals that I've heard, right? So I know that the world had cut off the banking system to Russia, basically. And I heard other people saying that Putin doesn't give a fuck because of the links that he's got through cryptocurrency and those sort of assets as well to maneuver through with money. But not the case, right? Obviously, this has an effect on the billionaires, but the whole effect of trying to cut off funds through the banking system to Russia is to stop them funding to do anything to continue the war, right? Do you know, are you aware if they have other means of finances besides through the banking system like cryptocurrency?
Yeah, absolutely they do. Absolutely they do. And I can guarantee you the cryptocurrency can't trade like it wants to trade because cryptocurrency is DeFi, which means decentralized finance. So it's very hard to cut off. But you still need to at some point transfer money to buy crypto, and you still at some point need banks too if you're going to sell crypto to get the money from that crypto. So
and they cut off that Swift payment as well, which stifles them, doesn't it? The international Swift payment that facilitates that.
You're dead right, Drew. So the Swift banking system is, if you have crypto and you want to cash it in, you need Swift. So you need things like this to transfer money. And look, I'm not saying that they can't move money. They're a very resourceful country. They're a superpower.
Just a big whack, though. Yeah.
It's a huge whack. And look, the sanctions are going to get tougher. At the moment, they've still got some sales from gas and oil that they're doing. They're still making, $200 million a day or something like this. But for a superpower in a country that size, that kind of money is peanuts. That doesn't last them 24 hours because they have a lot of, their army alone will cost them, the war in Ukraine. That's probably, when you look at the amount of military, the amount of planes, the amount of soldiers, the amount of tanks, the amount of fuel, the amount of food, everything they need to send in there, that war is a $2 to $3 billion war a day, easily. And $2
to $3 billion a day. Wow.
To keep that,
something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. And we're going to get to the amount of planes, the amount of attack helicopters, the amount of tanks, everything that's been destroyed in about 10, 20 minutes. And we'll go into the costs that they've worn so
give
far.
us the invasion. So tell us that start then, because I know that the war is so complex, right? We can go off so many tracks. I guess I'll try and step in with that flow, right? And initially, when the war was initiated, it was anticipated it was going to be a 3-day war on Russia's behalf. Was not the case. So maybe take that first step from there.
So the reason the Ukrainians have been so effective is because the American Green Berets have been there since 2014, and they didn't want anyone to know. That's the Americans, Green Berets. They didn't want anyone to know. They're, unlike the Navy SEALs, they're a special forces team. I don't know much about them, but I know what I've read, and they have been there training them. And the Green Berets specialty, what the difference is between them and, say, the Navy SEALs, is that they specialize in some type of environmental ground warfare, where they analyze the type of environment and they become experts in using the environment to your advantage. Where the Navy SEALs can be dropped in any environment at any moment to kind of go and do hostage rescues and things like this. It's a completely different type of special forces unit. So no one really knew the Green Berets had been there, but after Russia annexed Crimea, America obviously saw, and no one knew this, America saw the need to help the Ukrainians and train their military, and they did that. And they gave the Ukrainians a weapon, a type of weapon, which is designed by Americans, and it's American technology. It's manufactured in America. And I will say that American military technology is easily probably the most sophisticated technology on the planet. They have a weapon called a Javelin. So it's a shoulder-launched missile. And you've seen an RPG, rocket-propelled grenade, and all these types of things. They've been around for a long time. A Javelin has an infrared camera. You look through the infrared camera. The missile also has an infrared camera. What you see in the infrared camera is obviously thermal. You see heat, so it can see tanks, it sees troop carriers, all these types of things. Tanks are armored, but only mostly from the side, and they're not armored from the top or the bottom. And so these javelins, they use artificial intelligence. As soon as you lock on to a heat signature, the artificial intelligence uses pattern recognition, which means it matches the shape that the camera's looking at to a computer chip inside the missile. The front of the missile has an infrared camera, and that thing takes off. But it doesn't fly straight to a tank or a troop carrier like you would expect a normal rocket shoulder-launched missile to do. It actually travels up into the air and then comes back down onto the top of the tank, which is the weakest part. The turret flies off, and these tanks look like an aluminium can, with a stick of TNT that's been put inside them. There's nothing left of these things. So when they started this war, they had over 100,000 javelins, and that was given to them by the US. There's British technology in there as well, another type of shoulder-launched missile, which is called the NLAW. The NLAW, unlike the Javelin, it's much simpler model. It's a much cheaper model, but it's extremely effective. The way the NLAW works is it shoots directly at the target, but it doesn't hit the target. And what it does is the types of explosive they use, the NLAW has some type of magnetic sensor or something like that inside it. And when it gets above the target, it remains about 1 meter above the target and it explodes above the target. And it can actually leave a tank intact. Sometimes an NLAW is exploded over a tank and the tank looks like it's in one piece. But inside, because of the shockwave, the human body's been turned to pulp. And there's just these kind of dead bodies. And you don't have to take my word for it. It is crazy technology we're seeing. We've never seen this in war. And what's more fascinating is this is how I got into this. And this is why I've learned more about weapons in the last month than I have in the last 20 years, because this is all being uploaded to Reddit. And you can probably see some of this on YouTube. You can see some of it on Instagram and other social media platforms. I've been using an app called Reddit, and I've subscribed to some of the Ukrainian war videos on there. And it shows all this stuff on the ground happening. Every day there's more videos uploaded. And I mean, it's pretty graphic. You're going to see the bodies. You see what happens to the tanks and the weapons, and you actually see these things getting fired. And once you know the differences in the shoulder-launched missiles, you know exactly what technology that was, what happened to that tank, what happened to the troop carrier. And, to see this progressing every day. And of course, one of the massive mistakes that Russia made is a tank weighs 45 ton, right? Give or take maybe 2 or 3 tons. So it could be up to almost 50 ton, maybe down to 42, 41 ton, but that's a really heavy piece of machinery. They invaded Ukraine, right? When springtime's coming and the ground is getting soft, right? In winter, the ground's nice and hard. It's frozen solid. Tank can go over it, right? So all the tanks that try to go over farmland, and they all wanted to kind of swoop in, parallel, and these big, that's what they usually do. That's what they did in Iraq from the Americans. There's one big long line, goes for kilometers. They wanted to do that. They couldn't do that in Ukraine because all the tanks are so heavy, they're sinking into the farmland, into the fields, right? And they're getting bogged, and they've had to abandon them. There's like literally hundreds of tanks in Ukraine which have either been destroyed or abandoned because they can't get them out of these fields. And
the other side of the tanks, Ray, isn't it, is they're going in, and they're such an old technology, aren't they? They're going in and they're effectively sitting ducks to these missiles that you were mentioning before. So it's making it very easy for the Ukrainians too, isn't it, at the same time?
It is what we're seeing is the death of the tank in combat, because with this new technology, the Javelin and the NLAW, there's never ever going to be another ground war like this. I guarantee you superpowers and anyone with an army is looking at this war very closely, and they're saying, wow, we've got 5,000 tanks in our army, and they're useless because all the enemy needs are a few javelins and a few NLAWs, and our tanks are useless. In fact, like you said, Drew, it makes you a sitting duck. If I was a Russian invading Ukraine, I would not want to be in a vehicle because that's going to attract an NLAW or a javelin. I want to be on foot, and I want to be just jogging, a few hundred meters in the forest parallel to the convoys. But I do not want to be in a vehicle anymore. Not with this kind of shoulder launched missile technology that we're seeing the Ukrainians use. It's making mincemeat of the Russians.
So we've got a message here come from the UK from Mr. Bombastic. It says to emphasise this point, NATO and EU members nations. Sorry, I've got to bring that closer. Have been assisting the Ukraine military since 2013/14. Hence, Ukrainians' efficient use of the anti-aircraft missiles and literally dropping every single drone Russia tries to send. Now, my question to you, Ray, is that obviously Russia anticipated a 3-day takeover, and that didn't happen. It's blown out to a month, and they seem to be losing. What's been that process besides these tanks getting blown up? I mean, it seems with the statistics, a lot of deaths, a lot of vehicles blowing up, a lot of trouble for Russia. What else has been happening there?
Yeah, so because they can't go across the fields and through the forests like they would usually want to do, I mean, it's a huge logistical mistake that they made choosing that time of year. They have to stay on the roads. So they have to form really long convoys. And you've got, we saw there was like a 50 kilometre or 40 kilometre convoy a couple of weeks ago. They had to stop that convoy. They had to stop. They pushed in about 60, 70 kilometres into Ukraine, and they had to stop. And the Western world was wondering why. And everyone thought, they're just prepping their guns and getting ready for the invasion. Mate, they stopped, one, because all the other convoys ahead and on other roads are just getting picked off by Javelin and NLAW technology. And of course, the Ukrainians have got more than that. They've got drones called Bayraktar. It's a Turkish-built drone. Now they've got these drones, and of course, you can see all these videos on Reddit or YouTube, the Bayraktar drones, just like the American drones, but the Bayraktar drones are nowhere near as sophisticated as the American ones. But yeah, they're pinging, the Bayraktar drones, they're pinging the convoys as they're coming down. And but the interesting thing about these convoys is they require a massive amount of fuel. Tanks that weigh 45 ton require huge amounts of fuel. So you can't just send tanks into Ukraine, hundreds of kilometers. You have to have refueling supplies. And of course, the Ukrainian fuel stations, they're not going to be helping them. So Russia needs to send in hundreds of fuel tanks to keep these tanks going. And of course, these fuel tanks have to drive on the road, and they're soft targets. They're not armored. So if you want to stop a convoy with tanks, troop carriers, trucks with big missiles on the back, if you want to stop a convoy of hundreds of vehicles like that, all you have to do is hit the fuel supply. And that's what the Ukrainians are doing. They're targeting the fuel trucks.
It's strategy 101, isn't it? And can I just pivot your train of thought there, Ray, because I know you're going to have plenty to say on this. But from and I mean obviously behavioural science and psyche in my coaching and mentoring, but when we look at the morale, right? You look at for example, the US Army and their patriotism and their morale compared to, for example, the Russians versus the Ukrainians, right? We're looking at a depressed civilization, aren't we? I mean, they live under the regime of a dictator. Now they're further undermining their own standards of living by living under Putin and now going to war. And they're just not going in with that high level of morale and really believing in what they're doing, aren't they? And there's obviously some side effects there too, right?
No, you're absolutely on the money. The morale of the Russian army is probably the lowest morale of any army we've seen in living memory. And the reason for that is they are oppressed. Most of the Russian soldiers are conscripts. They're 21-year-old kids. They don't want to be there. They're forced to be there. They're not well trained. Nothing like the militaries we see in the West. It's the United States, NATO, here in Australia. I mean, the military machine around the Western world is just compared to what we're seeing and how badly trained some of these Russians are. They don't even know when they're in the convoys. They don't even know how to spread out properly on the road. They bunch together. So when they park on the side of the road, maybe to have a break or wait for a supply, some food to come or something like this, they bunch up like bumper to bumper. And so when a Bayraktar drone hits one of the fuel trucks or one of the ammunition trucks, it destroys 20 vehicles at once. This is kind of military convoy 101. You don't do that. You stay spread.
What you're saying there is they're really not the superpower that we once thought they were, right? This Russian machine that we thought was a well-oiled, quite fearsome and fearful, superpower. They're sort of bringing that undone, aren't they?
I'm really glad you mentioned that because what Vladimir Putin has achieved in 4 weeks, actually he achieved this in 2 weeks, but it's been about 4 weeks now. He was hoping to achieve the domination and the acquirement of Ukraine. And what he has achieved is four things, in my opinion. He has united the West, the Western world, like never before. That's the first thing he's achieved. He has made Volodymyr Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, a global hero, right? If you go onto Amazon, you go onto eBay now, you'll find T-shirts with the Ukrainian flag with his picture on it. I've seen videos on YouTube and stuff where they're superimposing his face onto the Terminator, videos of boxing matches where his face is superimposed and he's bashing Putin in a boxing match, all this stuff. And this is not from Ukrainian people. This is just people because unlike other politicians, when Biden offered Zelensky a way out and said, we can get an evac team to get you out of Kyiv, he turned around to Biden and said, I don't need a ride, I need ammo. Now, how many politicians do we know that would rather be in the trenches with the soldiers fighting than on a helicopter to safety? So when he did
our leader wouldn't. That's for fucking sure.
Yeah, our leader here in Australia would never do that. I mean, he's just not that guy. Zelensky has shown that he's got spine. He's got this huge sense of national patriotism and national pride, and he will not leave that city. He wants to fight with the soldiers. And, there's hundreds of videos and photos of him online now sitting with the soldiers eating, and he's just one of them. He doesn't think he's better than them. And that's a quality I like in any leader, that, he doesn't see himself as above everyone else, and he's there for the fight. So that's the second thing that Putin achieved, was making him into a global hero. Because to be honest with you, 6 weeks ago, I didn't know his name. Didn't even know. If you said who's the president over there in Ukraine, I wouldn't have known, wouldn't have cared. But now I see this guy and I'm like, wow, this guy's got something to offer. They're the two things that Putin has achieved. The other thing he's achieved is giving us a window into how poorly run his army actually is, right? He's given us a window into the fact that his machinery is old, their tactics are terrible, their organization's terrible. There's a video on Reddit where the Ukrainians, they've destroyed some trucks in a convoy. A lot of Russians have fled, some have been killed, and they're emptying the truck of all the supplies. And it's food. It's a food truck, and the food for the soldiers, their special military rations, they're used by date. They went out of date in 2015, which means they were made in 1995 or something like this. So they're 7 years out of date, and they would have been made 20, because they last for a long time. So this is the type of military he's got. Something else you'll see is that the communication between the tanks and some of the aircraft is not encrypted, right? You would never see a modern Western military not using unencrypted communication, right? So when these tanks are getting, because a lot of these tanks get bogged, they leave them, they run, the Russians run back, they don't want anything to do with it. And of course, the Ukrainians got all the communication equipment. So they're listening and talking to the Russians. And sometimes they just tape down the button on the thing, just so it jams a frequency, and the Russians can't even talk. I mean, this is mind-blowing that a superpower can be so easily undone with these types of techniques. I
also heard about the morale of, when you were speaking about low morale before, that a lot of these Russian kid soldiers across the border, and they were being offered money to drop their guns and get a place in Ukraine or something like that. Is that true?
That's right. They were being offered $10,000 over the CB, over the tank CBs and the troop carrier CBs, all these vehicles that the Ukrainians have now got, and they're offering them $10,000 to throw the gun down and give themselves up, and they'll get a place to stay in it. And obviously they got to fight with Ukrainians. There's literally hundreds of them that are doing that because they don't want to be there. It's not their fight.
And one of the fascinating things, I don't want to take this too left of field, but I think we're touching on something that I think is a deeper issue with, and that is the divide that's happening. And I see this globally, right? I see the divide between people of countries and governments. I just see this growing consciousness and this growing awareness of general populations. And it's increasing. We have the governments, which are this self-perpetuating, system that protects itself, and it seems to be growing this divide between the people and how we actually want to see these countries run. And it's obviously evidenced with Putin and his people. But do we see it around the world? I mean, who actually wants to go to war? Who actually wants their government to spend billions and billions of dollars on military hardware and not on the general well-being of their populations? And I think there's definitely some questions there for how, and then we go a step further as to say, how can the Russian people hold someone like Putin accountable if their general population, there hasn't been a referendum, maybe their general population doesn't support the war? How can the people wrestle control back off Putin to say, hey, mate, you're not representing the people. You're supposed to represent them. I know he's a dictator, right? But at the end of the day, there's multi-millions of people in Russia that can start waging a war against him, so to speak, and that is to take to the streets, for example, or to do mass protests, or to wrestle that control back from him to say, hey, this is not cool. Same as what Australia did in Vietnam, or whatever needs to happen. And it's the people, the power of the people holding our governments to account, right?
Yeah, I think there's millions of people in Russia that don't want Putin in power. I think there's millions of people in Russia that want democracy. As you know, Putin's put his his political rivalries in prison, or he's killed them. So he's pretty brutal. And let's just sidetrack of what the psyche of Vladimir Putin. Some behavioural science here. Novichok is a nerve agent, and it's obviously very, very dangerous. You touch Novichok and you're dead, right? So you don't even have to ingest it. So the way you kill people with Novichok is you leave it on a door handle, you leave it on the part of the toilet where you flush the chain or something if you know someone's going to go in there, and you kill them with that, right? So Putin kills people, and he's done it in England. He's killed a couple of ex-Russian spies that are in England, or he tried to. And he did it with Novichok.
Putin's ex-KGB, right? He's a dangerous man, right?
Yeah, so hitting, as in assassinating people. That's what he used to do, right? Or he'd be part and parcel to those operations. And so you have to look into the psyche of a man that uses Novichok in a country like England, which is one of the most kind of liberal countries on the planet, right? It is. He could kill. You can kill a person 1,000 ways, and you could obviously do it so it looks like it comes from somebody else. I just know I don't go around killing people, but if I wanted to kill someone, I would try and make it look like somebody else did it, right? To me, it's common sense because you don't want to get caught. Putin wants people to know he's killing those ex-KGB spies in England. That's why he uses Novichok. And he's basically sitting back and saying, hey, what are you going to do about it? I'm Vladimir Putin. I've used Novichok. You know it's me. There's no one else who's got access to that because we made it and we're the designers of it. What are you going to do about it? Nothing. That's why he uses Novichok. He could kill those guys 50 other ways, right? Car crash, put something to give him a heart attack, millions of ways, right? But he doesn't. He uses Novichok. This is the mentality of the man. He wants people to know that he's assassinating anyone at will, and he's going to do it in your country, and there's nothing you can do about it. That's when he's sitting at dinner, and that's who he is. He's thinking, oh, I'm this guy. No one can touch me. I can kill anyone. My reach is into any country, and I'll even let you know it was me by using a special weapon that we manufacture, and you can't do nothing about it. That's the mentality of the man. So he's not like a normal dictator. He's out there.
Ray, I've got someone who's written in staying anonymous, and they have said, will you be discussing that Ukraine was shelling the two separate regions since 2014, killing 14,000 people? Will you be discussing the fact that Putin for 8 years gave Ukraine time for a diplomatic approach, and after 8 years, he said he's recognized the two breakaway regions as nations and watched Ukraine blow them to bits? That's the anonymous message from
it's a great
two
message.
parts of that question.
It's a great question. It's a great message. I don't have any data. On Ukraine shelling those two regions for the last, killing 14,000 people. Don't have any data on it at all. I do have data on. I know Putin was saying things like, if you don't, sign, that you're not going to join NATO and all this sort of stuff. He was getting. He said that they had to. They weren't allowed to have a military. He was saying all this to Ukraine because he felt that Ukraine having a military was too dangerous. At the end of the day, if New Zealand, we're close to New Zealand down here. If New Zealand wants to go nuclear or wants to produce Novichok or wants to produce some type of biological weapon, we won't like it, and we use diplomacy at every level to stop them and say, look, we're not really comfortable. But that doesn't give us the right to start lobbing missiles over the border and or invading them with thousands of tanks. So just because we don't like, so what happens in my house is none of my neighbour's business, and what happens in his house is none of his business. If Ukraine was shelling that region. I would imagine, I'm not saying that Ukraine's perfect. I know about the Azov regiment. It's kind of more of a, there's some, far right. There's a lot of far right people in the Azov regiment. The reason I know, because I actually read up about a bit of this stuff. Zelensky used the Azov regiment to help fight and kind of stave off the Russian separatists that were in that region. But look, I'm no expert on it, and I don't have any data or any information about Ukraine shelling, innocent people or killing 14,000 people over the last few years. So sorry, I just couldn't comment intelligently.
Even if, and I know they have relied on some form of self-defense, right? Whether it's NATO or that. I've even heard accusations that US was setting up chemical labs there, and whatever flag they're trying to fly under, right? Taking it to the next level and invading another country, an independent country, I'm sure the international community wouldn't allow, or wouldn't support Ukraine if they were doing that. And I mean, but even right or wrong, to invade another country on the level that Putin is, it's a pretty big It's a pretty big move, right? There needs to be some pretty significant justification for that to happen. And he's flying. And no doubt, look, the facts are is that he was probably threatened by NATO moving into Ukraine, being a neighbour, strategically. You look at the amount of minerals and resources that Ukraine got, there could be another motivation there. Who knows what the motivation is, but they've done what they've done, right? And that is to invade an independent country. I mean, in 2022, let's be serious. Who would have thought that we'd be looking on the news in 2022 and we're seeing Russia carpet bomb civilian cities, bringing them to rubble? I mean, I don't know what, whether if Ukraine has done that, then I'd be staggered too. And I'm not educated in that area, but I certainly, the little that I do know is that I'm just blown away that he was seeing this mass destruction of civilian communities, 100 years after the World War. I just find it almost mind-boggling from a human psyche's point of view that we're still conducting ourselves on that level, right?
Yeah, I do too.
I have three things I want to go into. So one is about a friend of mine who's a cameraman who did some filming over there 2 weeks before the war and 2 weeks after, from what he saw. The second thing will be I want to ask about the oil, and the last thing I want to ask will be about the nuclear for this moment. So I'm just getting them out there so I don't forget. But first of all, I just want to tell you a thing that a friend of mine who works for, I think it's BBC, a mutual friend of someone that I have here in the audience that we were friends with living over in Thailand. He's from the UK. He went over to film. He films things for the news and he's firsthand on the ground. And I spoke to him about 2 weeks ago. And I have never heard him so rattled, so spaced out when he speaks, right? He's a pretty calm guy normally, gets along with things pretty average in life, right? But from the things that he saw in this war, he was affected, man. Like, he was actually there filming, and like he said that the hotels and his stuff that he was in were getting bombed because the hospitals next door were getting bombed with children in it. He said that there was orphanages where people had just run out. He had to still go out and film in the streets while these things were going on, and he said his heart was just breaking about the things going on. Like, he was taking photos of kids that were just destroyed, lost their parents, and all sorts of stuff he was telling me. I was just gobsmacked at some of the stuff he was saying, right? That's the first thing I want to put out there. That's right. No, the point I brought that is because while he was over there, there was some sort of propaganda from the Russian side of things where Putin had gotten a bunch of soldiers to film that they were shot or dead or bombed or something like that. And it came out after over there that it was actually fake and filmed. I'm not sure if that went public here or anything like that. You might know. So the next thing going on to that is the oil. Obviously, the oil coming, like the petrol prices here in Australia have gone through the roof, I think, through America and probably the world. What's the situation with that, and what do you think is going to happen, and the control that Russia's got with the oil over there?
That's a great question. Who knows? I think that I think the West are now going to deglobalize a lot of the world. As far as because globalization was a thing that the West has been pushing, where we want everyone to be part of the world trade, and we want everyone to prosper and get rich. Now, in the last 4 weeks, we've seen world leaders say that's not going to happen anymore. If you and we're not just picking on Russia here. There's other countries that they're talking about doing this too as well. If you oppress people, if you don't let people have free speech, if people can't have an opinion that's against what the prime minister or president of their country says, without fearing they're going to be put in prison, these countries are going to start getting pulled into line to say, no, we got to live in a free world. And why wouldn't you want to live in a free world? So I know that Sweden is a huge provider of either oil or gas, one of the two, and of course the Middle East. And there are heaps of untapped reserves in America and here in Australia, especially gas. We've got platforms offshore here. We only tap into a tiny percentage of what we've got. So the Western world can ramp up production over the next 12 to 18 months and go independent from Russia's supply. And look, Russia will probably find new buyers. China, they'll need the energy. They'll stop buying from certain countries. But maybe that would bring some type of sanctions toward China. Who knows? It's complex.
Isn't that fascinating? We're talking about globalization, right? We're talking about an economy being used against a country to basically say that your behavior will be curtailed through the punishment of your entire population. right? So we're actually using globalization as a form of warfare, right? So and it's this one world, and we're moving towards this one world and this one sharing of what is a global resource, even though we're raping and pillaging it. I don't think they're doing that very sustainably. But here we are using an economy, the globalization of the world's resources against a country. Now, this sends a massive signal, right? Because you've got China. In Australia, we would be absolutely shocked and staggered if we knew the percentage of Australia that was owned by China. But here we've got China sitting, on the global stage, moving into the South China Sea, sitting on the doorstep of Taiwan, about to do the exact same thing that Putin is going to do to Ukraine. And all of a sudden, they've got to scratch their head and think, well, hang on a minute. We're actually facilitating our entire economy by buying up strategically throughout the world, using globalization to our advantage. Now, if the world turns on us against Taiwan, that's going to bring us to our knees, right? So they may be having a look, and I don't think Vladimir Putin might have understood the power that the West has got to turn the taps off on his economy. And at what stage do its population actually say to him, listen, we're going back to the old USSR. This is not how we want to live, and that be the catalyst to remove him from power. But another thing I want to touch on while I've got the mic is, Rock, you said that your mate was affected by what he saw, in war. We got, there's so much evidence to support the fact that when a human sees another human suffering, what that does to their empathy, what that does to their emotions, what that does to their psyche. These are life-changing events, and we're so isolated. We live in this materialistic world. We're so we watch it on our screen, right? But when you see it, when you see babies and children and women and that being bombed and affected, and these are innocent people that haven't taken up arms, for a person in their own rational mind, again, these are life-changing things that your mate has had to see and endure. And that will affect him for the rest of his life if he can't find a way to manage those emotions and have an outlet for that. And here we are again in 2022, having to watch civilians, be bombed and suffer on that level. So again, having operated in a warlike situation myself in the army as a recon sniper, I had signs of PTSD after my active service and active duty. So I really sympathise with your mate and what he's been exposed to. And then we're seeing this. We're seeing this on a global scale, or on a city, on multi-millions of people. It's being unleashed. So yeah, these are lifelong impacts for people on the individual level.
Absolutely, man. And in fact, it's funny enough. Tomorrow morning, our time here in Perth, I'm doing a show, 10 a.m. It's 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time over in the US, with the head of the Mind Medicine Institute of Australia, with psilocybin and MDMA therapy for PTSD and depression. So that's going to be an interesting show, but just relating all back in full circle to what we're doing here. What we just touched on just a second ago with China's involvement, it looked like to me, and again, I'm coming from a place that's really neutral and not understanding the war properly, which is why I want to have this discussion. It really looked like China was going and holding Russia's hand at the start. And as the war's gone on, it looks like they've kind of let go of the grip of the hand and just slowly taking a step back. What's going on there?
I think so. I think so as well. I think China have seen what's happening to Russia's economy, and they, metaphorically speaking, are like this. Well, let's just back off. This is not something we want to get involved in. So they're being so diplomatic. I think 5 weeks ago, they would have been a lot more vocal in support of Russia and the right for a superpower to do what it wants to do. And look, I get, that there's people out there that don't agree with everything the West does. I don't, and that's the best thing about the West. We can call it out. We can point the finger at one of our leaders and say, you lied. You didn't do that. You didn't do this right. And we can look at, and we can draw comparisons. We can say, well, look, the West invaded Iraq under the premise of WMD, weapons of mass destruction, but we didn't find any. So now we're chastising Russia for invading Ukraine. They might be killing 14,000 people in the Donetsk region or one of those regions. I don't know about that. So Anonymous, if you're still listening, I don't know, man. I haven't seen that data, but it's shocking if it's true. And but there are some comparisons. But at the same time, when the West went into Iraq, and I say the West because I think there was a coalition of the willing, as George Bush would put it. That guy was a dictator, and he would throw gay people off the top of buildings. If you talked bad about him, he'd cut your tongue out and put you in a prison, and that was on a good day. So he was a really bad man. Maybe the war was premised on bullshit information. Maybe the information was inaccurate. Either of those, I don't have intel. I know what the conspiracy theories are, or even the theories are. So, but in this case, it's the opposite. You have a mad dictator, or maybe I shouldn't call him mad because I don't think he's mad. I think he's very clever. You have a dictator that will throw people off the roof of buildings if you say something bad about him. He will put you in prison for 10 years if you say something bad about him to a certain degree. And, he's got a little bit of patience maybe, but not much. And, Navalny, one of his political rivalries, has just been sentenced to another 9 years of prison. And that was literally like last week. So the difference is when the West, which is kind of like a democratic type of system, went into Iraq, it was to try and get a mad dictator out of there who had already picked wars with Kuwait, Iran, and was always threatening to start wars all the time, right? This time we've got the opposite. We've got a dictator who's always threatening to start wars all the time. He's already, and he's had a lot. And I know there's people out there that probably like Russia or Putin. I like Russia. I like the Russian people. I've got no problem with them. But Putin's already had a lot of wars, and he's already picked fights with Georgia, and there's other countries that he wants to take, or he says that have done the wrong thing in the past, and he doesn't want them joining NATO either. I'm no expert on this sort of stuff. So this time you have a dictator invading a democratic country, and there might be problems in Ukraine, but now we've already got in 4 weeks 3 million refugees. 3 million people have been displaced and have had to flee their homes, which you can see have been carpet bombed. They're all in, spreading out through Europe, and we've got, a ton coming here to Australia, which is fine. And I know there's 100,000 going to America. The interesting thing is it's only women and children that are allowed to leave. The men have a huge sense of national pride there. They don't want to leave. So husbands, brothers, sons are staying, and they want to fight. And the Ukrainian men have a huge amount of national pride there. What's interesting is it's just a random fact that I'm just going to put out there because it's worth thinking about. 3 million families have been displaced. All the men from those families are now maybe never going to see their loved ones again if they get killed. Their homes might get destroyed. All the females and kids have gone. And of course, elderly people, disabled people, they've gone as well. Over 15,000 Russian soldiers have been killed. And I think most of those soldiers didn't want to be there. And I think most of them went in there under false pretenses, thinking they were going to denazify some type of regime that was holding people, under some, oppressive regime type of conditions. That's not the case. Over 15,000 dead bodies now litter the Ukrainian countryside next to blowing up tanks or just because they've been pinged by a sniper or something like that. 15,000 dead bodies. That's a lot of dead people. And there's nothing about that makes me happy, whether they're Russian or Ukrainian. There's also 3 million families, right, that have had to flee. And there's about 1 million pets, dogs and cats that have to have been abandoned, right, in the Ukraine, right, because you can't take your pet to Poland, you can't take it to England, and you're not going to take it to America. You've got to abandon your beautiful pets, which is a lot of the time, people regard their pets as family members. I saw a video yesterday, and this is why I bring this up. I saw a video yesterday. You've got 15,000 dead bodies littering the countryside of Ukraine, and you've got packs of dogs who are starving, pet dogs that are starving, trying to find food. What do you think they're eating? I saw videos of this yesterday. It's horrific, right?
Wow.
So, it's out there. So I never thought I'd see that in my lifetime. But so these videos are being uploaded to Reddit, and that really kind of made my eyes pop out. I thought, wow, this is nuts. All these people, and they're just young people. I think most of the people that are getting killed are in their early 20s. They don't really want to be there. In my opinion, I'm 49. I think people that are 21 are still kids. I think they're very, that's just too young to be in war. But it's a real shame. But yeah, I saw videos of, dogs, not wild dogs. These are domesticated dogs, but they're hungry. And there's all these dead bodies lying around. And it's a horrific scene.
Wow.
Yeah, the sort of things you don't see on the news, but, obviously that are happening on the ground, aren't they?
Yeah, they certainly are.
Yeah.
It's out there.
It's something we don't fathom in the Western world, again, like I lived over in Thailand for 6 years before, and just going through some of those poor villages and seeing how some of the kids live and the way that some of them live in the houses. It's still a third world country as though it's gorgeous as well in parts, right? But there's other parts that are extremely poor. And to experience that from having the lifestyle that we've grown up and then seeing their way of life, living around it. So, you get to empathize with those situations, coming back to the Western world, and you hear some people speak about their fucking Gucci shoes and their bullshit fucking clothes and stuff. And I just like, God damn, they just got no idea. They know no different. They really haven't lived outside of that space, and here is these things going on with war that we are not aware of until you're seeing that firsthand. People's domestic dogs eating bodies. It's not even in our thoughts, right? And I never thought of it, even though there's war going on, that wouldn't cross my mind till you said it. We have a message here, boys. We have a message before I want to ask a question about the nuclear war stuff. So this is from Elvis.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Just listening to the show. I just had to chime in and say, Drew, you are sharp, man. Everything you say is the way that it sounds in my head when I think it, but it always comes out of my mouth like, what the hell's wrong with you? What are you, a freaking idiot? You know what I'm saying? But I need to keep you with me so you can moderate for, I'll say it in your ear and then you can say it, with, the genteel effect that you use. That's great, man. I'm loving it.
Thanks, Elvis. All right. So the big problem with this war is the threat of nuclear war, right? This is the thing that everyone's scared of. This is the thing that my buddy that was over there filming is actually extremely fucking paranoid about what happens. I mean, he's based in London, right? So he's like, Putin looks like he's got an itchy finger ready to hit that button, and he's just worried that if that happens after what he's seen, it's more believable for him because he was there firsthand looking at things, right? Even though he's got no access to know exactly what Putin's doing. What are your thoughts on that? What happens in your understanding with the breakdown of nuclear war? How easy is it for Putin to access that button to press it or not?
Drew, what do you reckon?
Oh, I reckon from a nuclear standpoint, I reckon the world has reached a point, and I'd like to think that the human logic and the human psyche is coming to a point now where we take a good hard look at the line that we've walked up to, right? That is, there's 3 or 4 countries sitting on enough nuclear bombs to destroy the world. Now, here we are thinking that we're the smartest race in the world. We've got everything under control. We're as wealthy individually as what we probably ever have been. There's more wealthy individuals that control less money across the entire face of the planet now than there ever has been in the history. How on earth are we sitting here on enough nuclear arsenal to destroy ourselves? There's no other species on the face of the planet that has walked themselves up to extinction as we have under our own control. So at what point do we say that enough is enough, and then we start to make moves to de-escalate, to communicate like human to human? We drop this ego. We drop the sense of it's my country. We drop the sense that I own this land. No one owns the land. Mother Earth owns the land, right? So we've got this false ego that's driving our sense of we're Australian or we're American, we're China, whatever it is. This illusion of separateness, that we've got something to defend, rather than make moves to unify. And okay, we might think differently, but how can we find a way to find common ground, right? If Russia wants something from Ukraine, surely we can find a way to negotiate a mutually beneficial outcome. But yet here we are.
The problem is, Drew, I don't want to cut you off. The problem is that might be how the massive population thinks. But unfortunately, the people controlling these situations do not. They're the ones that are the dictators. They're the ones that think differently.
And I touched on that before, Rock, exactly that. We as the people hold the power. Now, we need to start holding this self-perpetuating governmental system to account, right? We're very limited on who we can and can't vote for. There's 2 or 3 major parties up there that are self-perpetuating systems. And we as the people, through social media, we can come together and provide a voice for the masses to start holding these governments accountable. And like I say, my point is, Ray, is that we've walked up to this edge. We've created a piece of technology that is threatening our own existence. Now, the governments will say, no, these weapons are here as a deterrent from us to be invaded. That is a very archetypal, ancient form of psyche that has followed us through thousands of years, where we're still defending a country, we're still defending a territory. So my question is, and my thought pattern is that how can we step back away from this threat of, hey, we're on the edge, and hey, we're going to walk up to the edge? Because at what point in time does Putin go, you know what, well, I'm about to lose here. You've cornered me like a rat, which is the suggestion is now. So he's only got one move to make, and that is to press the button. That is just, to me, that just blows my mind that we're at that in this modern age, that we're walking up to that line again.
I couldn't agree with you more on that, and the fear of backing him to a corner, exactly that. There's only one way out, right? And not just that his only way out, it's that it almost seems like with that dictator mindset, if I can't win, nobody wins. That's his fucking attitude, right? It sucks. He doesn't want to lose face. He doesn't want to be that losing dictator, right? So back to the original question, I guess, and is that, what are your thoughts on how this nuclear thing may or may not unfold?
My personal opinion is this war ends maybe four ways. There's a coup in Russia. The generals and the people, some parts of the military get pissed off because this operation has just not happened the way it should have, and they've lost so much equipment and, of course, so many lives. And there's a lot of generals that actually care about the soldiers, and they turn on Putin. That's happened many times in history, where the military has turned on the government. That's one way. Putin has what's called the Russian Guard. He has 340,000 trained, kind of like secret servicemen, right, that keep him protected. And in the last month, he's become very paranoid. So he sacked over 12 generals that usually live in the Kremlin or work with him very closely, because they have dissenting voices and they don't agree with everything he's doing. So he sacked them and got rid of them to get out. You can't agree with me. If you're not 100% behind me, get out. That's not how an intelligent person functions. And I'm not saying he's stupid. He's very smart. But with me personally, if I'm with a group of people and I'm the smartest one in the room, I leave. I want to be around people that are smarter than me, because that's how I learn. And I want to be around people that have different opinions and can show me things that I didn't know. So when Anonymous came on before and said, about the Ukrainian thing, about those missiles, my response was not to automatically jump to Ukraine's defense and say, no, I haven't heard, that's bullshit. Mine is my response is, if there's evidence there to see that, I'd love to see that, because that's going to shed a lot more light on why this is happening. I've got my eyes open. I can only go on what I've seen, but I admit there's other stuff out there I probably haven't seen. In fact, I know there is. So with this war, it ends with a coup. It could end with someone very close to Putin killing him, assassinating him, because there's so much financial pressure on the billionaires and on the Russian infrastructure at the moment. There's going to be a lot of pissed off people there. So and look, the American presidents, there's been ones that have been assassinated before as well, a few of them. So this is not out of the realm of possibility that this could happen. The other one is, like you said, and both of you touched on this, is that he resonates from pride and ego. He will never admit that he's made a mistake in Ukraine, and he's getting cornered in there, and he can't win a ground war. So a guy like that, what does he do? Does he say, shit, I'm sorry, I made a stupid mistake. Come on, everyone, get the soldiers out. Let's go home. He can't do that, because he has to save face. So yeah, he might just think, F this, I'm not gonna sit here and look like I've lost. Let's go to the next level. And he might even feel that, he's coming to the end of his leadership, because he's under more pressure now in Russia than he's ever been by a lot of very powerful people in Russia. Even though he's the dictator, there's still very powerful people there that can put pressure on him, or, exert certain pressure through certain channels on him. So, he'll sense all that. But know this, Russia would have to go to war with maybe 80 different countries. That's obviously NATO's got God knows how many. And there's a lot of countries that are not affiliated with NATO that will stand with NATO, dozens of them, right? Russia will have to go to war with most of the world. All of us, and I hope it never happens, would just have to go to war with one country, and that's Russia. And unfortunately, the technology to shoot down nuclear warheads, hypersonic weapons, using the GPS system. The Americans control that. The Americans can make the GPS system go 1 kilometer off in another country, but keep it dead accurate in this country. They have all that technology. So if you're using GPS guided bombs and all that sort of stuff, Americans can have all sorts of fun with your weapons. So we've seen that, you know.
We're living in denial, Ray, aren't we? To think that we're not sitting on a situation. I'm talking about in the nuclear context, Rock, as well. That America, China, and Russia specifically haven't got a direct nuclear plan to wipe off another country off the face of the planet using nuclear weapons, right? To disable another country. They've got these plans in place, and there's all sorts of keys and codes that they use to hit a button to obliterate another country, right? That's the line that we're walking up to, right?
Yep, absolutely. So I would be look, the last thing any of us want to see, is a nuclear war. We don't want to see anyone else get killed. Doesn't matter who you're fighting for. I think all of us listening and watching this agree that we just want this war to be over, and we don't want to see anyone else get hurt. That's what everyone wants. So is there a threat of nuclear war? I think we're closer to nuclear war now than we've been for decades with this threat, because really we don't know what's going on in the minds of some of these world leaders. I mean, we don't know if there's leaders in NATO at the moment that are saying, let's just pretend we're not going to support Ukraine, let's just give them weapons, and that's what they've been doing. But they're planning a tactical nuclear strike to cut the head off the snake in Russia, in 2 nights' time. We don't know that. And why would they give Russia notification that they're about to do that? They may deem Russia as an existential threat to Europe, and they might say, wow, we think that this guy could hit the button at any moment. We're going to do a preemptive strike first. That's what America did with Iraq. That was what they used that term, preemptive strike, right? So we know that NATO countries will use preemptive strikes if they feel threatened. So there's a lot of rhetoric out there. I think this is very extreme. I don't think it's going to come to that, but you can't dismiss it, because one, we're not seeing the intelligence reports. We're not analysts, so we don't get to see all the intelligence that they get to see. They might be eavesdropping on communications in Russia, and vice versa. Russia might be eavesdropping on European and NATO communications, and it only takes one intercept, right, where either side gets wind that they're planning a tactical nuclear strike, and the other one launches. And it could be something that was misinterpreted, that they intercepted, which was completely innocent. It could be 2 guys just joking, 2 politicians having a joke, as if, let's pretend that we were actually going to do it. What would you say? And you hear an analyst hears that, and he says, shit, they're going to hit. And they bang. It could be over something as silly as that. So I think we're the closest we've been, Andrew, but we're still miles away.
Well, I heard an analogy on the weekend, not an analogy. There's some place, and I didn't catch it properly. I was talking with a buddy of mine, and apparently over time, since the first nuclear bomb was dropped, there's like a clock where they move the hands closer up to the 12, the more likely that there's going to be a nuclear strike with the news going on in the world. And it's been as close as a quarter to 12 before. It might back off to 25 minutes to 12. But currently it's set at like 1 minute to 12. Like there is such a high chance of nuclear war potentially supposed to go off, right? I'm not sure where that information is from. You could probably Google it and find that out. If someone can, let me know. I might put the link up here. Now you've gone through, I think, 3 of those ways out of 4 ways that you think that the war would end there, Ray. What was the last one?
The last one is there's a war of attrition, right? So the ground war in Ukraine continues for, a few more months or even a couple of years. It just goes back and forth, tit for tat, like we're seeing at the moment. And then there's a peace deal, and Zelensky hands over certain regions of Ukraine to Russia. Russia then can have Putin can have some pride, and he can say, look, we won, we freed all these people from the Nazis, and we've got this land at the same time. He looks like a hero. That's what Putin needs to walk away. Something that can make him look like a hero to his people. You give him that and he'll walk away. But of course, the Ukrainian people, they don't want to give their cities away. I mean, think about where any of you live. Think of a town 100 kilometres away, might have 50,000 people in it. Those people that live there all their lives, they don't want to give it away or stay there and be under a dictator. They want to live in Ukraine. So it's a tough gig to sell for the Ukrainians. But I think it's what Vladimir Putin wants. He wants something. He wants a trophy he can take back.
All right, we've got a couple of messages, guys. I'm just going to find out what they are. One is on the screen here. Diana, we are the human race, humankind power. Yes. I totally agree. We've got Mr. Bombastic from the UK saying, despite world sanctions in Europe, especially, Russia is the big player in terms of gas. What do you guys think of the fact that Boris Johnson, for example, was in Saudi Arabia a couple of weeks ago trying to do an oil and gas deal with a country known for human rights violations?
It's it's a shocking predicament that the world finds itself in when you have to do business with people that you don't particularly like. And I think you've all heard the expression lesser of two evils. Right now, Boris Johnson, and I'm not saying what he's doing is right, I'm not agreeing with it at all, but I think Boris Johnson's mentality is he's looking at the lesser of two evils, and he thinks Saudi Arabia is not a threat to Europe. They're not going to invade us or invade Ukraine or anyone else. So, and look, they are. I know they're having a war with but yeah, I think that's what Boris Johnson's thinking is. He says, I'd rather give my money to a country that's not going to be a threat, even though, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of human rights violations, and a lot of people are trying to get out of that country because they just don't want to live under such an oppressive regime. So,
and then there we have the power of money, right? The power, the significance is that countries rely on other countries' resources. And to some degree, like you say, Ray, they're having a deal with the lesser of two evils to say, well, I've got to put what's important for my people, above their human rights issues. And we all know ethics these days, for countries and organisations is a huge topic. And, we are making progress in that area. But here you go. They're having to overlook it because they need to do what's right for a wider population rather than a minority. And that again, it's just the power of money, isn't it?
Yeah.
Mm. Okay, what about when it comes to chemical warfare? It looks like there's some activity potentially happening around that. I don't know where that stands. I heard things like I listened to another podcast a couple of weeks ago. Where it's kind of pretty easy to watch intel for that sort of stuff, and whether they're carrying gas masks and whether they're moving barrels close to the borders, and it looks like some sort of activities happening. Are you aware of anything about any chemical warfare?
Yep, there's been intel on that. There's Russia started to put on Russian state TV that they had found chemical labs in Ukraine, and that intelligence was that Ukraine was amassing chemical weapons. That's usually because they're intending on using chemical weapons in Ukraine, and then when it happens, they say, "Oh, it's a spill. These people spilled it, or we hit one of their trucks that was carrying these weapons, or something." I'm not saying Russia's planning that, but that's what the narrative on the news is around the world. Could be propaganda, might not be, but what is evident is that in some of the Russian soldiers' equipment, they've all got gas masks that are designed to protect them from chemical weapons. So you don't usually carry those types of equipment unless you think you're going to come into contact with it. So that doesn't mean to say that we're going to use it. Could be the Ukrainians that we're going to use it. But so far, I think any country that uses these types of weapons is deemed a war criminal. Okay, so any military that uses these types of weapons, it means that you may never see Vladimir Putin leave Russia again if they use chemical weapons. I don't think he's allowed to leave Russia ever again. He might do, and he certainly probably will. If just because I know what the world's like now, he can get away with a lot. After this war, though, he's already been accused of war crimes, and there are courts around the world that can indict him for the types of things that we've seen happen on the ground. So if someone as powerful, Vladimir Putin, was to go somewhere, to the UN or to The Hague or somewhere like this, where the International War Tribunal is, would he be arrested? Probably not, because he's obviously too powerful. But but who knows? Like with Saddam Hussein, in these moments, if he is overthrown with a coup, and they take him prisoner, they'll hand him over because they want all those sanctions lifted. They'll hand him over to get those sanctions lifted if there's a new government put in place there. So, who knows how this could pan out?
All right, so I've got a scientific question for you, Ray. Really, if nuclear war does go on, what are the effects for the world? I mean, of course, it's disastrous. I get that. But what would happen? What would the process be? How long would it take? How far would the effects go? Would the whole world be fucked? Like, what's the situation with that?
It's a great question. So the initial nuclear flash is what fries your DNA. And that's what's going to cause you to have all kinds of cancers, right? There's a type of cancer called teratoma. It's terrible. And it's where your genes just have no control over, which genes get turned on and off. So you could have teeth growing out of your arm, right? That's a form of cancer. You get these tumors, they're called teratomas. You can have hair growing out of an eyeball. And because when a nuclear flash happens, that it's like you're standing in a 1,000 X-rays, and every piece of DNA in your body gets fried, and short circuits. Or short circuits, not the right term. And the genes don't know what to do, so they just keep growing, producing proteins, producing all types of body parts which are not supposed to be there. I mean, you'll be dead if you're close enough to that flash, probably, and hopefully you'll be dead because you don't want to go.
We're smart enough to split the atom, but we're not smart enough to stop a war. It just boggles my mind, eh?
Oh, it's crazy. It really is. And you know what? This is the problem. With great power comes great responsibility. Where'd you hear that? I think I heard it in Spider-Man. We've got that power now. And I've seen some people, when I've been looking at some of this footage coming in from Ukraine, there's some really big ordnance being dropped, and it's huge, huge explosions. And people are saying to me, that looks like is that a mini nuke? You got to know that nuclear weapons are next level, right? You'll know when it's a nuke because they are next level. They are next level. So, and the wind or the shockwave from a nuclear weapon is 4,000 kilometers an hour. So when it hits buildings, when it hits cars, it hits everything. The glass just vaporizes. It becomes liquid. The buildings will just move like paper. And if you're within 5 kilometers of that thing, you will not survive. If you're within 10 kilometers, you'll probably be pretty badly injured. You'll definitely get cancer. And hopefully, you can get underground. That's the safest place to be, a bunker. And and I will say, there's a show, I've seen it on YouTube a couple of times, called Doomsday Preppers. I don't know if you've seen that show, if you know what that's about. It's about these people, and not just in America too, they're all around the world, and they build basements and they store food and weapons and things for these types of incidents, but not just for war, but all types of things. And, if the preppers right now, they're the only people that will probably survive a nuclear war because they've got those facilities and all the equipment to do it. And a show that 10 years ago looked like a show for crackpots, Doomsday Prepping, is now a show that probably everyone is saying, shit, I wish I listened to that because we're so close to a potential conflict.
It begs the question, Rock, like where you're going with that. How many nukes do they have to launch before the world reaches a tipping point to say, there's no coming back from this one, guys?
If it's happening in the northern hemisphere, does the southern hemisphere get affected? Us being Australia, part of the Western world, but down under, do we get affected? Like, I want to know sort of how far that reaches. Obviously, you can get cancers. Like, the whole breakdown is it cancers you get quickly in a 3-month period? Is it something that by the time you get old you'll die? I'm just unsure of the whole. The darkness for 24 hours with like nuclear clouds, or what happens,
Yeah, you get cancers pretty quick. So, at Chernobyl, the guys that were going in there to try and, contain the meltdown, within 36 hours, their skin was bubbling, right? Now, they're not near any heat, right? They're not near anything hot. I mean, there's obviously a meltdown, but that's not, the heat's not killing them. But the amount of radiation that's pouring out of that reactor is enough to, just bubble the skin, but not in a heat way. You can't feel it. So you're in there for 2 hours trying to do what you want to do. And then when you're at the hospital, you're starting to feel sick, you start vomiting blood, and you get these boils just appearing all over your body just because the radiation has been frying you. You're basically standing in a very powerful X-ray machine for 2 hours. So, you might not feel it straight away, but you feel it. So you do die pretty quickly. And, if you're further away, the effects are less. That's called the inverse square law. So, but the closer you are, if you're close enough to get fried, your teeth will fall out within a week, hair will start falling out, and you can see I've already been hit by one. And I'm only joking. I actually shaved. I've actually got a little bit up there. It's actually a beautiful head of hair. I like to shave it. And and by the way, can we just Rock, because you're such a cool looking bloke, me and Drew were talking, and we just wanted to say, is it okay if we both, like when we're on podcasts with you, if we wear sunnies as well?
You just want to
Yeah,
honor,
absolutely, mate. Yeah,
we
you ain't going to take away from
we
this.
want to honor
We
you,
wanna-
Rock.
we want to just pay tribute to you, Rock.
I like that. That's good, boys. Thank you very much. And now, yeah, all we need is the biceps, like Drew's got, right? Mate, I was
Yes,
telling everyone
yes.
last night's podcast how the basket of chips that you got that time that we were caught up for lunch, the wind just blew the paper and he caught it with his bicep, which is
I
amazing.
noticed
I'm
that.
still
Yeah.
laughing that you're telling that story. It was like my bicep just went to, just caught this piece.
The funny thing is, he was he was 6 foot away from where the basket was, but his bicep still caught it. All right, so we have a message on the screen here, real quick. Oh, there we go. So Dave's put the Doomsday Clock, and I wonder if I click this now. Look, it opens up for me. My camera might have stopped, but there you go. Doomsday Doorstep. It's 100 seconds to midnight. 100 seconds to midnight. There you go.
Oh wow. Okay, that doesn't.
Yeah,
sound
yeah.
good.
So we're close.
I have heard of that.
Oh no,
before,
now
the
my
Doomsday
screen's.
Clock.
Sorry.
I have heard of that before. The Doomsday Clock. Yeah, that's the term.
Yeah.
100 seconds.
It's in
to
the
midnight.
notes. If anyone in the audience wants to listen, you can see that. You can click on. Where
Can I
can
just
they
ask a
click?
question here, right? To wind this up, right? And this is a question to the audience, to everyone listening, right? What do we do as a human collective to progress towards this one love, this one world unity, where we don't require nuclear weapons, we don't require billions of dollars of military hardware, we don't require billions of dollars in counter spy, and counter terrorism sort of activities around that. What do we do as a collective? What do we get our governments to do? What's the next move for us here to heal this form of psyche? I'm really interested to see what solutions people can come up with that we say, you know what, this is no good anymore. Haven't we learned? Surely we've learned from previous world wars that this is not. No one wins, right? There's no winner, no loser. I mean, we say that in essence, but really, who does win and who does lose? So, what is the next step for humanity to stop this form of behaviour, right?
It's a good question, man. I don't have the answers for that. Of course, the obvious answer is unity and love, and overcoming these governments. That's true. However, I'm just not sure that the behaviors of humans can really pull together at this last minute and overcome that. I have doubt in humanity. I do. I'm not sure that we're going to go all the way to the end with the nuclear war. In my opinion, I'm not sure. I hope not. But I think some of the things that we needed to do as humanity should have happened a couple of decades ago. We should have been uniting a little bit earlier, a little bit stronger. The fact that we're on the verge of nuclear war is probably a little late to start holding hands. I think the damage, for the most part, may have been done. I'm not trying to sound pessimistic. I'm actually quite an optimistic person. I just find it hard to see the reality in us as humanity stopping things. But that can absolutely still happen. I'm sure. But that's my opinion anyway. What do you guys think?
What do you reckon about that? From a psyche perspective, what do you reckon? What's your input on that one?
Okay, so I think there's things that need to be taught in schools globally. And I think one of them is non-attachment, which is what you touched on before, Andrew. You said, people say they own this land, they own, this country. They've got this sense of attachment to things, and that makes them very protective of things. And they also have visions of how they want things to be. Even if it affects other people, they want their vision, and that's what we're seeing in some countries. Certain dictators and certain rulers, they have their vision of how they want their country to be. They want to go back to the old days or another era, and that's a form of attachment, right? So there's another thing that is not taught in schools, which I think should be taught. It's called evidence-based thinking, right? So evidence-based thinking is, I see it in a lot of people in this day and age. We're getting better. But a lot of people, they'll attach themselves to a politician or a country. So they'll attach themselves to, in this argument, it could be Russia, or they attach themselves to Ukraine, and they will defend it vigorously. No matter what I say about Ukraine, they'll defend Russia. No matter what I say about Russia, they'll defend Ukraine. And that's a flawed way of thinking, right? So you look at the Trump fans and you look at the Biden fans in America, and it is a polarizing form of politics where a lot of people actually can get into really toxic arguments because they are so passionate that their leader is the best one. As a scientist, I have to discipline myself, right? And I'm not allowed to take a side on say politics, right? I can see politicians, I see what they are, but as a scientist, right, I'm never allowed to have my own personal preference in a lab. So what that means is, if I find some, like, let's say I find some extract out of a plant, and I think, well, I think this is going to be great for anti-aging. This is going to be amazing, and I have an emotional attachment to that compound, and I want that compound now when I put it into mice to keep the mice younger. Right? That's right. So let's say I went to a lot of work to make this compound. I had to get a farm. I had to grow it. I had to extract it. It cost a lot of money. The last thing I want to see is it doesn't work. So I get emotionally attached to it. Now I'm going to fudge the results a little bit because I want to sell it in the market and I want to make out that it had some kind of effect, right? So we have to train. You cannot be emotionally attached to anything. And what you look at is results on the ground, right? Same with politicians. Don't get attached to Joe Biden. Don't get attached to Donald Trump, and don't dislike them either. I can see the personalities in both of them, and we can rip the personalities apart if we really wanted to. Look at the results on the ground. That's all you got to do. And that's how you should be with everything. I don't think humans have been taught this in school, and it's really important that they're taught evidence-based thinking because it allows you to step back and not just argue, because it's called a rabbit hole, right? You can argue for Donald Trump and say, well, he did this, this, and this, and you can make similar arguments for Joe Biden with different policies and this, and this, and no matter how much evidence or argument you give the other person, they will never change their mind. Because the fact is, you know that movie A Few Good Men where Tom Cruise says, I want the truth. Well, the fact is, nobody actually cares about the truth. The fact is, everybody has already made up their mind. And no matter how much evidence you put in front of them, they're never going to change. And that's the problem that's what we need to teach people. We need to teach people, don't lock yourself into a certain mindset where you're unflexible and you're just going to latch onto one thing. Just sit back and let the evidence flow and just, see the results on the ground. So that's not taught. And if that was taught, you'd have completely different forms of politics across the globe. That's what I believe.
Mm. What about yourself, Drew? What are your thoughts on the question that you asked there?
Oh, interestingly, Rock, as we spoke about, I touched on last night, I've written a movie concept called The Perfect World, and I use the model of a perfect world that's 5,000 years ahead of this world, and it's got an undercurrent of themes of what Ray's touching on, and it's the collective consciousness growing in awareness of itself, and and this is why we start on a micro level with what we can control and changing ourselves. And what Ray's saying is that we become detached from what we see is right and wrong, and we start to control our own thoughts, and we heal ourselves. So we become this more conscious, more aware entity of ourselves, and then we ripple. It becomes a ripple effect. So by living in my own truth and by being open and open-hearted and being able to be, find the line between being right and wrong and again, living this healed version of myself, we send this ripple out, right? So, and then when the masses, like for example, the masses of Russia and the masses of China and the masses of the Western world start to unite, I think that we can start holding our governments accountable and we progress towards this one love and move away from the old archetypal, mindsets that we've carried forward into the modern day, which I think are so outdated. And I think to some degree, we as a human race have protected that. We haven't wanted to facilitate change. We've wanted to actually slow that down. But now I think consciousness is really growing at a rate, and our awareness is increasing. And through the use of social media and all these other tools out there, and the free exchange of communication, I think it's going to come about sooner rather than later. That the world's going to come to a point where we know, and again, like Ray's touched on, we detach from this this it's mine, it's my country. I mean, look at the amount of population flows now. You know, we're a multicultural world operating in a global economy, right? So, but yet we have these, you know, these leaders and these countries and these governments maintaining this self-perpetuating system. It's outdated, and I can tell you now, there's going to be massive change in the next, I believe, in the very short term. That is going to change that way that governments rule and the way that governments are able to dictate to their people. I'm telling you, even it's going to change massively, even in democracy. You know, even the governments in a democracy have got far too much power over their population. So, yeah, I see that change is coming, and I think it's all off the back of us doing our work as individuals, and again creating that ripple effect and connecting in community with like-minded people, and spreading this message of one love and with people. Race, you know, a soul doesn't see colour, right? A soul, we all share the same soul, right? The same life. And when we identify with that in another person, we start to see race, religion, colour, you know, all these things fold away and drop away, right? So I think that's the way we're progressing, and I think that's going to be the antidote to these sorts of, conflicts and the way we deal with their issues, right? Because, I mean, if we look at it on the micro level, right, if I go out and smack someone in the mouth because I think they've done the wrong thing, I go to jail, right? So here we have a country on a mass level going into another country for unjustified reasons and sending a message that it's okay to handle our issues like that. I think that's my hope in humanity is that we outgrow this whole situation for sure.
It's a great answer, man.
Yeah, well said.
Getting round of applause from the listeners as well. That was good. It was a good one, man. We have 2 messages. I thought I saw one come up somewhere else, but I can't see it. But I do see 2 from Legends. Let's hear what he's got to say.
I think anything that affects change in life or anything that affects change in war is coming from somebody that can level with you, that can shoot you straight, that can be humble, that can admit that everything is not good, that can not have that fanatical mindset, but realize that people are being hurt, and to protect human life and to protect the sanctity of someone's existence should be first. You know, that gets lost in the shuffle somewhere, but you guys are great. This is a great show. Thank you. I am Legends. Appreciate you all.
That's
and
a
we
great
have a follow-up from
comment,
Legends as well. That was another one here.
Hey, great show, guys. And Raymond, to your point about understanding, the beginning of understanding anything is realizing you don't understand anything. The beginning of all understanding is realizing the vastness of, you know, comprehension. And trying to explain that to somebody is very hard who's lived a life of understanding what they know, what they go through, what they see. But it is possible. It is possible to see and affect that change. It just has to continue to be talked about and illustrated and demonstrated through the narratives and the conversations that we have, and changing those conversations, and not just accepting the things for what they are as they are, but making the change and telling the story differently. Great podcast, guys. I am Legends.
Thanks, Legends.
Awesome, man.
Appreciate that. We've got one more come through from Lauren, and I hope this is... You're in the listeners. Yeah, this must be for the podcast. Sometimes someone might leave me a voicemail. Hey, Rock, you answer. Oh, no. Okay, it's not. Okay. No, it's not. She said don't play it. So luckily, this is what I'm not sure of. We have a group where we can send these messages.
Come on, Lauren.
Here, I'm going to play it.
You can do it.
I'll play it anyway. Here we go. Hey, Rock, you're the best. Oh, thank you so much, Lauren. I appreciate that. She's sending one now. She's going to send one now anyway. All right. So in the meantime, we're going to wrap this up. We could probably continue this again in a couple of weeks because there's more shit that's going to happen in this meantime. But what I want to know right now is if any of the listeners do want to pop up to the stage at all, just say a quick hello or inject something before we wind up. We've probably got 10 minutes or so left if you want to do that. So hit the little plus button if you're listening here live on Fireside. You can join us, or you don't have to. It's up to you.
I will say it would be, I see that you have some of the same listeners in here regularly. And Elvis, I love your accent, man. I don't know where you're from, but it's pretty laid back. But these are great conversations to have for a couple of beers. And so if we're ever over in the States, we'll have to come and visit some of your listeners over there, Rock, because it's some good conversations here.
It is. It's awesome. So thought provoking. A couple of things while we're waiting. Humility, I tell you what, is the antidote to ego, right? And that is to be able to be, like Ray said, is to be okay with not knowing, instead of defending a position that you know very little about. But it's an intrinsic thing that we have built into our programming to say, hey, no, what I'm saying was right, and defend that position. And Ray, we had that situation. We were out in the boat, and we're trying to direct our way back, and Ray was saying going right, and I swear it was going left. And in the end, I was wrong, and I had to humble myself to say, no, I was wrong. But again, this is the position. This is a great example of the fact is sometimes we get so set in our mind that something is right when it's really not. And it's all about being humble enough to say, you know what, I am wrong, or let's consider it from someone else's perspective, because we've got empathy and we've got sympathy, right? And sympathy is feeling sorry for someone from your position. Empathy is feeling sorry for someone from their position, or understanding it through their eyes, right? And I really don't think we do enough of that as a human collective, right?
Well said.
Absolutely, man. We have a couple of guests popping up here. So we got it says me, but it's actually Mr. Bombastic. He's your mic's on mute there, Mr. Bombastic. I just got your messages right now, so maybe you might want to reiterate them now. But go ahead, mate.
Absolute pleasure, guys. To
Mr. Bombastic.
I just wanted to say something very quickly to the both of you, like especially to you, Drew. I sent it to Rock. Like, I'm from Rwanda. I don't know if you guys have heard of that country and everything. And there's a very lovely proverb that comes from there that I think you'll appreciate. And it says, there's no healing or unity without forgiveness. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Wow.
And like me, like myself, like given my history, my family's history in terms of Rwanda, and given my military history as well, it's like seeing what's going on right now in terms of Ukraine and Russia and whatnot. It's like it's at times like these where you don't want things to go left. You need that forgiveness. You need that unity. You know, you need everyone to be apart. You've done by the night. Let's all just, forgive. Might not forget, but let's forgive and see how we can move together, as opposed to reaching the end game where we just all get fucked up, basically.
Yeah, it's profound words you've spoken there, brother. And we spoke about this last night. I'm not sure if you were touching on that comment of forgiveness, and specifically we talked about forgiveness last night on how forgiveness is not justifying the action. It's letting go of the judgment of the action, right? So it's not saying that the act was all right, and it's moving, like you're saying, towards that position of let's focus on healing and let's focus on the oneness, and yeah, that's really profound what you said, brother. So I really love what you just said, man, big time.
Thanks, Mr. Bombastic. We've got a couple of messages before we throw over to Deanna in a second. It's from Lauren. So these are the real ones, I think. Here we go.
Sorry about that. It was recording I Am Legends, and he talks and hears enough of himself every day, so couldn't let that pass. Hi, guys. I'm just popping in. Was listening while I was in the middle of a massage, so I couldn't really respond. But I just want to say what Free said in regards to we're all the same. This is something that I try to stress all the time. I say this to my kids all the time. We are all the same. I'm light-skinned Latina. My kids are half white, and we live in a very Caucasian community. And I always try to express to them that, even though you may blend in, remember, we are different. We are a little different. Our experiences are. But underneath all of this, right, this white, this tan, this black skin, if we peel that back, there is nothing that separates us. Mm-hmm. We are 100% the same. We are entitled to all the same things, all the same privileges, the freedoms, the life, the right to live and exist.
And she's got a follow-up couple here. Here we go.
I think that it's important for us to, as you said, Free, staying true to yourself, right? Staying true to who we are as individuals, but also being able to recognize that there is some really fucked up shit going on around us, and that we need to be willing to open our eyes, open our mouths and our hearts and minds, and see that the people that are experiencing this, like in Ukraine or in Yemen or in China, because nobody's really talking about that stuff right now either. This could be us. And as Americans, if we keep behaving the way that we are, thinking that we are untouchable, we are going to at some point experience what these other places are experiencing. It's just a matter of time.
And she's got one more follow-up from that one.
Yeah, wow.
Free is just mentioning about forgiveness, right? And I agree, we need to have forgiveness, not forgetting, but forgiveness. But we also need accountability with that. Not just forgive, definitely not forget, but 100% accountability, because what we're not doing and what is upsetting to me as an American is that we're sitting here pretending as if we don't contribute to a lot of the chaos that is going on around us. And I want accountability. I'm also someone who is a veteran, and I've seen the sides of things. So, I want accountability and honesty and integrity, which is something that we are lacking as a people, unfortunately.
Thank you, Lauren. I don't know if you guys want to contribute to that at all. Or she was making those statements. But.
Actually, Rock, what I want to say is, we've got a sniper here tonight, Drew, and we've also heard from Mr. Bombastic, said he was, in the armed forces. Heard from Lauren, who said she was a veteran. So I just want to, shout out to say thank you for your service. And if there's any other military, personnel listening, thank you so much for your service. And look, hopefully this world can, get its shit together, and we don't have to worry about this kind of crap. It's crazy.
Totally agree, man. Totally agree.
Could I jump in, Rocstedi, really quick?
I think Deanna was just first there. Just 2 seconds, Legends. Deanna, go ahead there. You can unmute.
Okay, thank you. So to circle back, and I think it was Lauren that you just played, kind of touched on this. I think if we look at things and recognize, while you guys were talking about ego, recognizing, that we don't know even what we don't know, and that we all come from our own background and our own experiences. So that's where humility comes into play. And there are things that can accelerate us towards what our aims are as a human race, as humanity. And things like humility and integrity are those type of things that move us towards that. Humility to be open, to learn, approach things like a child, so that we can have that ability to absorb and to learn, because all we're doing right now in our own bubbles are seeing things with our color slant from our own experience. So we're seeing things from our own perspective. And while we have access to a lot of this information and we can see all of these scenes on Reddit and this and that, when you hear people talk, like, especially on this app, I find, we have the people are from all over. We're from the States. You guys are from Australia. We have somebody in here from Rwanda. We can really start to learn the different perspectives and the approaches that people have. If we approach that with humility, and then as Laura brought out, Laura, I don't know who, I'm sorry if I'm getting the name wrong.
That's okay. Lauren.
Brought out with integrity. That means you are holding yourself to your values and keeping your word to yourself and to others. If you approach things like that, this is where you gain wisdom. And I think integrity, humility, and wisdom are places that we need to start working in as accelerators towards the things that we want for humanity. And then top it off with love, because love heals. And that's basically, I think, where I'll
Beautifully said, Diana. Beautifully said.
Well said.
All right. So, lastly, we've got Legends. Legends, go ahead, mate. Unmute your mic.
You guys are all beautiful people. This has been
Deanna.
An amazing show. Thank you, Deanna, for that. I just wanted to say that as far as forgiveness goes, it's been talked about quite a bit. Forgiveness is an internal thing. and it's often not done correctly. I think, and what happens is if you do forgiveness correctly and you work through whatever was bothering you, your resentment, whatever it was, it actually becomes a powerful tool to outwardly express. And I think that's what people miss. It's an inwardly thing that we do for ourselves, not for the person that hurt us or whatever the case was. And that's all I want to say. Appreciate you guys.
Well, awesome.
Thank you, legends. Yeah. Drew really went into that 24 hours ago on the podcast.
He
did. And
yeah,
it was fantastic. Yeah, you were there. You were listening. That's right. So you did catch that. And it was, he really gave me that realization about forgiveness. I knew it was a powerful tool. I've heard many people use that before to overcome a lot of hurt that they've been through, traumatizing situations with others involved. But man, did you make me realize how to do that. Drew, brother, that was like amazing the way you described that, man.
The other thing, Rock, I just wanted to mention is I just ended a 15-year marriage yesterday, and I feel freer and more liberated and more at peace than I ever have in my life. And it's because of forgiveness. It's because I'm able to walk out that forgiveness now. And everything that's happening is just a confirmation of me being at peace and knowing that life happens and people are faulty and we all go through things and I'm okay with it. And that's really it. So, yeah.
Good on you, man. You're a good dude. And I know your family situation. So I know that you've come out of hell, basically, and you're in a beautiful situation now, man, with your kids and your new partner. So well done to you.
Just want to acknowledge that strength in vulnerability you just showed there, brother. You're owning your journey, and remember, nothing happens to you; everything happens for you. So you're about to open like a flower that's blossoming, brother. So just embrace that and lean in, brother. You're on an amazing journey.
Yes, thank you. Thank all of you.
Thanks, man. Thank you. All right, we'll just put me down to the listeners, legends. Got to be careful not to kick people. That's a bad thing here. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much. We're gonna wrap this up now. Look, a great conversation. I think it's some great insights, some great information that I didn't know. Just how strategic the West is right now, and how archaic and behind Russia is right now. That's kind of a peace of mind in one sense, but there's still the nuclear threat that's hovering around. But it's looking a little bit more promising to what my thoughts were before, without having this understanding, because I just thought we're going day to day here, like we don't know what's going to happen, the world's going to blow up, like that's what it seems like. And to get another perspective or insight on that, it's really important. So I appreciate your time, appreciate the real breakdown of it, and the questions from the listeners as well. Do you guys have any sort of final thoughts you want to add to this particular show?
Just thank you, Rock, for giving us the opportunity to discuss this, because obviously it's a very, very important matter for the world. And I think there's a lot of people that are interested in it. And as I said when I started, I'm no expert. I'm just following it. I'm just trying to share the information that I'm coming across. Happy to look at different people's opinions and learn more about, other sides of the fence. But it's a pleasure to do a podcast with you too. And thanks to the listeners for your great questions and feedback. It's fantastic. It's good energy.
Yeah, likewise.
Thanks, mate. Thank you, Andrew.
I'll mirror that, mate. Thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the listeners. Thanks for your time. Time is our most precious resource, so I always appreciate someone's time. My last thought on this, right, and it's in line with if we apply the right perspective, life doesn't happen to us, life happens for us. In every great challenge, there is opportunity. So with the right focus and the right intent, we can lead not just ourselves, but our collective through a challenge, and it become the most beautiful challenge. And you actually needed that challenge as a catalyst, right? It's like the bushfire that burns down the forest, but the forest is able to regrow through those seeds, right? And I'm not saying the war is this. I'm saying that as an individual, if we can control what we do and control our mindset, then you're actually going to create that ripple effect and create the change that you want to see. It's got to start with us, right? It's got to start with the individual. So again, just encourage everyone to keep doing our work as an individual and keep worrying about what we can control, and that is our behaviour, our thoughts, and our actions. And peace and blessings to everyone. Thank you, Rob. Thank you, Ray, too.
Thank you, Drew.
You're welcome.
Thank you, man.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
So if anyone wants to book these guys as well to do any talks, Drew is now name is free on here at the moment, just due to a spell check as you hit save in Fireside because you can't change your name. So, but you can hit him up. He's got his own.
Love free anyway.
Okay, he's staying as free. We're going to call him free then from now on. Okay, so he's got his own podcast. He's been made a content creator here on this app. So Man to Man podcast will be here, and I'm not sure launching pretty soon. And Ray, he's my guy. Stay the fuck away. No, he's good. He's going to be able to. He's going to be able to talk as well. But we're going to be doing some more regular talks. Ray was one of the first people I spoke with on Fireside as one of my guests. So I've kind of got this little thing for him, and I'm happy to keep doing that with you, man, because your information is fantastic, as well as you, Drew, man. Like I've met you guys. You guys are real life friends. So you just, like attracts like, right? You guys are just two pigs in a pod here. You can see. So that's pretty cool. To find you guys on social media. So Drew, his old Instagram got wiped out. So he had to start again basically, but you can find him as Drew Geldit on Instagram and also on Facebook, whereas Raymond is more on LinkedIn and Twitter. Twitter is still pretty new.
Joe, I just started a Facebook group on Saturday. So it's called Rewind.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it's called Rewind Time, Science of Aging. And if anyone wants to learn how to slow down aging, if they want to understand why they're aging, feel free to join. We'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, reach out to me.
Mate, your technology.
Reach out to me again under Drew Geldit. It's not free, like I said. Catch me on Facebook or Insta under Drew Geldit. Welcome the connections.
Awesome. And we've got a message here from Mr. Bombastic for you, Drew. It said, Drew never got back to me about that hug, by the way. That hug, did you hear the hug he was asking for yesterday?
Oh, the 6'10" guy that was.
That's the one, 6'11". That's right. He's the guy that was jumped on stage before. You could hear his voice. He's got massive balls that drag on the floor. Nice deep voice.
Mate, big love to you. Virtual hugs, plenty of them.
Sweet as, man. All right, and for myself, you can find me. You could just hit Google and look for the Rocstedi podcast. You'll find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Discord, Telegram, and all that jazz. Like, I don't follow them all, but they're all there. All right, thank you very much, folks. Appreciate this this podcast. We'll hop down. We'll bring the weight bot back up, and off we go. Okay. Come on, weight bot. It's frozen.
Great music, man.
Oh, here we go. We're having trouble here. God damn it.